a basic business rule is you got to give your customers what they want. And what they want isn't always what you think they want. That's been a lesson that I've learned over the years. And what people want, at least 93% of them, is aligners. So I figure an orthodontic practice should be at least around that 90% mark share of chair aligners. I've gone above that, but I would say that would be a good sort of goal to set.
Hello there, Orthopreneurs, and welcome to another episode of your Orthopreneurs podcast. Today, I've got a really special guest. He's coming to us straight from Miami Beach. You'll be able to tell from his accent that he's clearly from Miami Beach. Put your hands together and give a warm Orthopreneurs welcome to Dr. Semaan. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone.
Can you hear his beautiful? I didn't know this until he told me, but there's a Miami Beach, Australia. I had no idea. I know there's a Paris, Texas, and Athens, Texas, but I didn't know there was a Miami Beach, Australia. And so, and we're on a run of Australians, by the way, on the podcast. It seems to be that Aussies aren't, there aren't millions and millions of them around, but when you guys move into an area, you take it over. And in the last 4 or 5 months, I've had Vas Shravasanan, David Bachmeyer.
Both good friends of mine.
Well, I mean, everybody in Australia who's orthodontist seem to be good friends with each other. And it really seems to be a very collegial sort of, it feels to me in many respects the way we all want it to be in every other country where, I've never heard, I'm sure it exists, don't get me wrong, but I've never heard one Australian really speak negatively about another Australian orthodontist. Do you feel like it's a little more collegial in Australia, or do the same people still exist in Australia? You just don't want to talk about them.
I would love to say that we're more collegial, but honestly, I've been to the States so many times, and I just love the vibe and the atmosphere and the camaraderie, which is why I just keep going back again and again. So I don't think we're any better than you guys over there. I feel like you magnetize yourself, Glenn, to some really nice people, and so we probably come across as being the nicest Aussies that you'll meet. I don't know. But yeah, we get all sorts here too. Don't worry.
Well, next January, end of January, myself and a number of the Orthopreneurs RD members are going to be going to Australia as a group, as one of our trips. And so I'll get to judge for myself what it's really like.
Exactly.
So I know we've got a lot of really fun things to talk about today. Spoiler alert. Well, no, not really spoiler alerts. We're going to talk about a product that Stephen has created that is really cool. I've tested it myself. I've used it in the office, and my patients actually love it so much more than the alternative, but we'll get into that. I'm going to talk a little bit about, what it's like to practice in Australia. We'll discuss that a little bit. His unique journey. He has an MBA, and it's not that common. So we're going to talk a little bit about how that might have helped him in practice and his journey on that a little bit, as well as the fact that he's got an almost 100% aligner practice in a country where utilization of aligners and share of chair aren't really above 20-25% on average. And so we're going to hit a whole bunch of fun topics, but let's start here. In sort of that 60 to 90 seconds, Stephen, do you mind giving everybody a little bit of a very, very brief background of how did you end up where you are right now?
How I ended up as an orthodontist, or how I ended up with iChew, or where do you want to go?
No, let's start with the most basic one. How did you end up being an Australian, practicing in Miami Beach, Australia, and your educational journey?
Okay. Well, I actually started in Sydney, Australia. That's where I was born, and I'm the child of 5. I'm one of 5 children, and both my parents are immigrants. So my father came across on his own, left Lebanon back in the late 60s, and knew that life wasn't going to be great there. So he wanted to start a new life in Australia. And back then, Australia was actually paying immigrants to fly over or come by ship to Australia to populate Australia, because we're a large landmass, almost the size of the US. A lot of people don't realize that, but we didn't have a lot of big population back then, and we still don't in comparison to a lot of countries. My mother did a similar thing very shortly thereafter from Austria. So I'm half Lebanese, half Austrian. My mother came over actually with a friend, and she moved to Sydney as well. And they both met up and worked at the same place, fell in love, and the rest is history. Had 5 kids. One thing that I got from both of my mum and dads, because they brought over nothing with them, they started life with nothing. But what they had was grit and determination and an incredible work ethic, as a lot of immigrants did back then. And that is something that was instilled in myself and my siblings. The other thing too is my father became an accountant, and so talking about business and investments and sort of entrepreneurial discussions became kind of just a normal thing we talked with Dad, going on trips in the car or at the dinner table, and I didn't realize it at the time, but that that sort of became a part of me that I later in life inspired me to do an MBA. But just going back a little bit, as I had braces, as a lot of teenagers do, and I want to do a quick shout out to my orthodontist who's still practicing, John Mamatil, wonderful human being, who I'm sure will listen to this podcast. When I went to him, he was actually in residency, so I was one of his resident patients. And he put me in, I'm sure he didn't get a choice to, but he put me in beg brackets. A lot of the older orthodontists might remember what they are. And
by the way, I have to ask, is anybody still doing breg? Because you always heard about Australian wire and Australian techniques and breg.
Yep.
Anybody still practicing it?
Not to my knowledge, no. Thankfully.
I had to ask.
No, it's a good question. If you saw my pano, you'd see very short roots on all my teeth, thanks to the incredible forces of stainless steel wires being bent to detail things. And anyway, but you know what? That I saw him have so much fun. It just inspired me and excited me about considering becoming a dentist and even orthodontist. And that's really what did in the end, is it inspired me to become a dentist to start off with, obviously. And I actually joined the military as well, and in the Air Force. So I was in the Air Force for a number of years as a dental officer, practicing what I would just call ideal dentistry, really enjoying what I was doing because I had full freedom to do what I needed to do. If someone needed a root canal and a crown, that's what we did. If someone needed an implant, that's what we did. There was no compromise. It was just a wonderful, unique place and situation to develop my skills as a dentist and really enjoy doing dentistry. But an interesting thing happened. Within about 2 years, I started to become kind of bored of doing dentistry, not because I became perfect at it, far from it, but I just kind of lost the excitement pretty quickly. And I had to make a quick decision about what to do about that. I thought, maybe is it just practicing in the military? Maybe that's what it's done. So then I took a part-time job in private practice, and that was a quick discovery that no, it wasn't that. But thankfully, I applied for orthodontic program in a few different schools, and I got accepted in Western Australia, which has a wonderful orthodontic program. Big shout out to anyone from UWA and Professor Mithran Gunawarden and the whole amazing team there. And so that's where orthodontics began for me back in the early 2000s. Invisalign had just made its way to Australia, and everyone, of course, thought, oh, this is just something that's going to be for like some relapse cases, really mild, basic crowding kind of cases. And we got to do one Invisalign case. And my orthodontic demonstrator, he said to me, all right, we're going to do this case here with the 4 premolar extractions. And I was like, okay, let's do it. But of course, back then I didn't know anything about Invisalign. I took a 1-day course to get accredited, and we just sort of went all in. And of course, back then the capability of aligners, and especially with extraction cases, wasn't great. I didn't get to finish the case because I started it sort of halfway through my residency and had to hand it over to the next resident who followed after. I'm pretty sure it ended up in braces. But what it did for me, though, is it was, I can't describe it as anything but just serendipitous and just sort of quite magical. But I just really took a great interest in aligners. I thought, this is interesting. Could maybe clear aligners one day in the future be equal to braces? Maybe even take over. Could braces become something obsolete maybe in the future? And, well, 20-something years later on, here I am working on the Gold Coast, and we're 99% aligners. The only reason I'm not 100% is, and I've thought about it many times, just ditching the braces, is there are those families that they've got their own reasons for it. There's not many of them, 1% of my clients, but they just want to have braces. And I guess I just can't see them walk. I don't have the heart to watch them walk out the door. And
I'm going to interrupt you here because it's a great stopping point, because you basically just covered your entire story that I was going to ask you later on, which is great. But I want to hit the idea of clear aligners, because you dove a little deep into that, and I really want to explore it a little bit, because just without getting into too many details, your American counterparts, just real quickly, do you in Australia typically charge more or less or the same as what we typically charge for a case here in the United States? Let's start here. First of all, you're not the average American orthodontist because you're Australian. But what I mean by that is, for instance, you and I first really had a real conversation face to face when you were on Summit this year, when you came all the way from Australia for a 4-day cruise. I can't get American orthodontists to travel from, California to Nevada for a 2-day meeting because they can't get away, right? They use air quotes. I can't get away for 2 days. And yet Australians like the David Bachmeyers, the Vasarvasanans, the Stephen Semans, you guys have no problem getting on a plane, traveling, 18, 20 hours, whatever it is, for a 2, 3, 4-day meeting. And so I'm just glossing over this just a little bit, just to say, anybody out there who says they can't make a meeting, come on. I mean, people from other parts of the world would kill to have the access that we do in the States to meetings. So Americans, buckle up here and start going to more meetings, because you're not going to enough. And why do I say that, Stephen? Because at the end of the year, when we're recording this right now, I get so many emails from people saying, hey, Glenn, I need 3 more credit hours to hit my minimum for my state. Do you have any Orthopreneurs University courses I can take? And I'm like, what's your state limit? They go, I need 25 hours a year. I'm like, you're not taking 25 hours of CE a year? This is healthcare, folks, but that's another conversation for another time. I just want to say kudos to you for the amount of courses you take. Let's dive into aligners a little bit here. And I know that you charge in Australia, at least you personally, roughly, I'd say about 90% of what most class 1 crowded cases would cost in the United States. So it's not like it's a pittance, but you're almost 100% share of chair aligners. And I know Align ain't giving you some special Australia discount. So what would you say to the tons of American orthodontists who say, I won't do aligners, they cost me too much, and I don't want to make less money? How would you start that conversation with somebody? And I know many who like to say that.
Yeah, great question. I do get asked that a lot because I do speak for Invisalign. I have done so for the last 15 years. And the most common topic they ask me to speak on is on that topic, pretty much, is like how to increase your share of chair to aligners, how you manage patients, how you are able to be profitable with aligners, and more so than with fixed appliances. So that's a lovely topic for me.
And by the way, the reason I'm asking you is because I know a ton of orthodontists who are making amazing livings, way better than they would have with braces and wires, with way less stress, doing aligner, almost aligner only practices. Go speak to Dave Boschkin. He's one guy who can easily explain to anybody. There's other people, Scott Runnels, who's down in Florida. I mean, if you really want to do it, you can do it. And that's why I'm asking you, because
100%.
I know you're not doing something magical. It exists and you can do it. And if you think you can't make that kind of living doing aligners, then, you won't. I mean,
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Sorry for stepping on your toes there.
It's one of those interesting things that, you talk about this a lot, and it's why I'm so attracted to Orthopreneurs. It's just a perfect fit for me. Is that so? It all starts here, right? It's all about mindset. I was too young as a new graduate and foolish, maybe, that I didn't think to myself, maybe aligners couldn't be great. I just thought, why can't they be? Let's go all in. So I sort of learnt the hard way, trailblazed it in Australia as much as I could, because there were no study club meetings back then to sort of guide me through a process, a carefully thought out planned process of how I'm going to transition from, doing 5% aligners, chair to chair, to 10 to 20 to 40 to 50 to 80 to nearly 100 now. So I've sort of had to trailblaze it largely on my own, largely with people like Dave, Buckmeyer, Vas. We're actually in the same study club, which is how we know each other so well, very like-minded. And it was called the Invisible Orthodontist group, and visible being like clear aligners. So we're all about aligners and how we could make them be successful. So we all sort of helped each other through different obstacles that we faced. And one of them was a cash flow thing, of course, because, yes, paying for aligners is so much more than paying for a set of brackets. Although that said now, Light Force, without going into that too much, the cost of that in Australia, at least anyway, is kind of on par with some aligners, getting some aligners. But going back to can you make it profitable? Absolutely. There is no way in the world I'd be able to see the number of patients that I can see doing fixed appliances. So I'm a one-doctor office. I have roughly 20 staff, and we just moved into a new office, actually. It's 12 chairs, but I was in a 7-chair practice, 5 of those clinical chairs, 2 of those consult rooms. We were able to do a 1,000 Invisalign starts back in 2019.
Wow. That's incredible.
Haven't done that many since. I've tried. But yeah, I did it kind of just to prove that it could be done. And there's just no physical way that I could have done that with braces. So the ability to scale, of course, if anyone listens to these Orthopreneur podcasts, it's similar topics again. It's about scaling. It's about leveraging. It's all those things that other businesses in other industries really understand well, and we would do well to listen to them and learn from them as well, and apply those things in our industry, which I've tried to do, and I continue to do that. And I've learned a heap from your guests that you've had on shows in the past. But it's this similar theme. It's having a growth mindset, working out how to leverage and scale, and you just can't do that. There's just no time in the day to bend that many wires and change them over and reposition brackets, which it's like my previous career. I don't do a lot of that anymore. I don't have broken brackets in the afternoon that I need to squeeze in and stress out my staff. Our whole day runs like quite smoothly, and there's no big stresses. I'm spending a lot of time in what I call my virtual office. So I've got this cool little room set up with 5 computer screens, and I have 1 to 2 digital assistants, and we just spend the day having fun, creating beautiful smiles. And yes, I work my way into the clinic. Of course I do. But it's not often to do a lot of physical work. I'm mostly making clinical decisions about maybe how to run elastics differently, or whatever it is to take the clinical treatment in the right direction to get the
by the way,
the results.
Again, just because I know a little bit about you, you're not just using Invisalign, you're using dental monitoring as well. Absolutely.
So dental monitoring came out to Australia. I think one of their first stopping points was in Australia. I was at a conference, an Australian orthodontic conference in 2016, as I recall, and in Melbourne. And Philippe Salah was there, who's the founder, of course, of dental monitoring. And he was there at a little booth, and no one was really dropping by to talk to him. And I won't say I went over there because I felt sorry for him. I went over there because I was generally intrigued, and I've always got an open mind to anything. If there's new technology, I want to know about it. I pride myself on having the latest and greatest technology for my patients. And so this was new, and I thought, well, what's this all about? And so I went up to him and I said, what's this all about? And we spent a good hour or two just talking about his journey and his story. And again, I just had that inside me, that little voice that said, hey, Steve, you got to get onto this. This is awesome, and this will, again, free up your time. This will leverage your business and be able to be a great, great blessing to your patients, so that you can sort of, give them more of your time, without having them come into the office more. And so that's where it started for me. And it didn't come out to Australia for a number of months. It was sort of like a soft launch for them. But then we picked it up in 2017 and have been using it ever since. So I'm pretty sure I'm the longest user of dental monitoring, one of the longest users of it in the world. And we actually got an award for being like the largest user of dental monitoring in the world. I remember Philippe presented me that. He said, you are the number one doctor in the world using dental monitoring, which back then maybe didn't mean a lot because it was still quite new. But I thought that was kind of cool because we had about 1,200-1,400 patients on dental monitoring back then. We went all in. And that's the kind of guy I am. I don't dabble. And I think that's probably a key thing to share with the audience too is if you're going to do something well, you can't dabble. I know you've talked about this, Glenn, so many times.
And yet nobody listens, Steve. Well, I don't want to say nobody because I know you're listening, but the people who need that message the most might hear it right now, and they're still not going to listen to it. And they're going to make up excuses like it's about Invisalign or it's about, dental monitoring or some other outsourcing and miss the point that when you're stuck in the middle of any technology, if you say, I'm going to use dental monitoring on 10% of my patients, what does it do for you? I mean, sure, those 10%, great, wonderful. They're getting great dental monitoring, but you're not seeing less patients. You're not working with less staff. You're not becoming significantly more efficient. So you don't get to reap the rewards of the technological innovation. When you go all in, go ask like a person like you or a Dave Boschkin or a Scott Runnels, who, go ask Bob Skopek. I mean, out of Chicago area. I mean, the guy, I think, went from like 10 or 12 staff members to 2. Yeah, I think he's speaking at Summit on efficiencies and what have you. I think he has 2 team members because he went all in on technology. So again, you brought up a great topic that I'm passionate about. I'm sorry for stealing your thunder there, but I want to add to this. Not only are you almost entirely Invisalign, not only are you one of the biggest users of DM in the world, you're also, I'm proud to admit, a remote response user. You allow us to manage your dashboard. So thank you for that. And
thank you.
Has it been good for you? Have you enjoyed it?
Absolutely. Years ago, I actually thought about, I even registered a business name and everything for what you've done. But I didn't have, unfortunately, the knack and the ability. So kudos to you, Glenn. Big shout out to you for doing that. As soon as I heard about it, I thought, I don't feel like I'm very competitive. I just stay in my own lane and I just do my own thing. And so when I see something come along, I don't think, oh, gee, I've got to compete with that and try and do better. I'm just humble enough, thankfully, to adopt that technology. So when I heard that you'd already done this wonderful thing and come up with remote response, I thought that's a no-brainer to me. That's the MBA inside me said, you need to jump on that. And so I did.
Hey everybody, tickets for Summit 2025 are on sale now. Take a listen to what some of the attendees from Summit 2024 had to say.
This is one of the most unique, most impactful meetings that you can go to as an orthodontist.
It has everything compared to other meetings. Entertainment, the content in the meeting, the speakers, the food.
I learned a lot. It helps the practice, so it really kind of checks all the boxes.
You hope to get something out of it that is going to pay dividends for years to come.
Definitely return on your investment.
We take back a lot to our office.
You get information that you probably don't get easily at any other meeting.
I appreciate it. And, for real quickly, we just jumped into the Australasia market. And for those out there who don't know what remote response is, basically, you heard he has a huge aligner practice. He uses a lot of dental monitoring. As a result, when you do dental monitoring or grin, I'm not afraid to mention names. When you do any sort of, remote care product out there, remote monitoring, you need someone in your office who's going to sit in front of a computer screen and essentially communicate with the patients back and forth. And if you do it right, folks, if you do remote monitoring right, you reduce considerably your emails, your texts, and your phone calls because you're funneling everybody into their dashboard, hopefully, which means that one person handles most of the communication for the office, and now you can work with less team. And the problem is, it's simpleton's work that you can't assign to a simpleton. because you just can't trust people. So, this is the part that boggles my mind. And again, I won't go long on this one, but so many doctors are paying somebody $25 an hour, $28 or $30 an hour US to sit in front of a dashboard and talk to patients, which, by the way, their average response times, if you look in your insights, are usually measured in days, not even hours. And I had somebody recently tell me they have 750 patients who are going to be monitored part-time by one of their employees. And I said, 800 people, give or take, is a full-time job if you're doing it the right way. And so we just decided to create, it's almost like a call center where we work through the dashboard for dental monitoring users. And if you're a dental monitoring user, we don't work with anybody else right now. If you're a DM user, we monitor your dashboard and communicate with the patients through your dashboard. So it's seamless. Your patients have no idea. We do it 75 hours a week in the US, not as much in Australia yet, but eventually we're going to go 24/7. So that your team members can be doing the things that they need to be doing that isn't simpleton work, like growing a practice, like training. And you pay probably 40 to 50% to us of what you'd pay a team member to be doing. It's a no-brainer. But again, those who are the people who are who's who of who's using us are some of the smartest people I've ever met. The people who say they can do it themselves, God bless them. And if they can, great. But I'll guarantee you, if we look at their dental monitoring insights, you will see response times that are through the ceiling. And you'll see a lot of mistakes going on the dashboard, but that's their choice. My question, and after all of this, after we get sidetracked, is you're an aligner user. You're using Invisalign, pretty expensive. You're using dental monitoring, one of the biggest in the world, and you're using a remote response. How can you turn a profit, right? That's the question people are going to say is, I should just not use aligners. I should not use DM, and I should not use remote response. And I'll just take all that money and put it in my pocket, kind of along the lines of, Michael Gerber wrote the book, The E-Myth Revisited, right? Where anybody who's ever worked for somebody has said, I'm making the shoes and it's in their business. I'm making the shoes. They're making all the money. How about I just make the shoes and I'll make all the money, which is the E-Myth, which we're not going to get into now. But I want to come up with a myth name for this one where I won't do the aligners, I won't do the DM, and I won't do the remote response so I can make more money. How would you poke a hole in that argument?
I'd like to hear from anyone that thinks they have, done that, been more successful by doing it the analog way, and if they have, well done to them. And if they're happier doing that way, as you've said billions of times, well done to them. We're not judging, but basically, I've looked at my numbers, and I know you're a numbers guy, Glenn. You have to be. When you actually sit down and look at the costs for your fixed cases versus your costs for your aligner cases. Yes, the fixed costs are higher, but the number of visits. This is a big thing that really bugs me when I talk to. You mentioned before when I talk to other orthodontists about this. What do we talk about? It's amazing how many of them don't consider their own time and their own costs. Right. I know you bring this up a lot, but it just bugs me so much. They'll say, "Oh, I like to make my own aligners." They're into the aligner concept. They understand that they want to go aligners, but I'll just make my own. Well done to you. But now you're gonna have to buy all these printers and have all these technicians, and I hope they're never sick, and make sure they're making them on time. All they're counting is the cost of the plastic, or the per unit cost of their printer. They're still forgetting a fundamental cost, which is their own time. In designing and treatment planning, our time is the most expensive time. So anything at all that would reduce the doctor time, even if it means like use ChatGPT. We've talked about this before. Yeah. If you're not using ChatGPT, I'm sorry to say this, but you're a fool. Can I say that? You're a bloody fool. That's what we'd say in Australia. You're a bloody fool.
You're a bloody fool. And
that's right.
The funny part about ChatGPT, it boggles my mind, Stephen, because you and I are two of similar ilk, is like the things I use it for. A quick example. I'm trying to develop a platinum coaching program to help orthodontists really boost their revenue tremendously and cut their overhead and like every aspect of a practice one-on-one with just me. And, if you want to come up with every item that you're going to go through in a year, do you know what a daunting task that is to come up with a list of? So what I did is I came up with about 75 things that I really feel are key points in a practice that you need to master to have a really successful practice. And then I just put in a ChatGPT and said, okay, of these 75 things, give me a list of 10 things within each one that I should be aware of. Now, I can go in there now and rip apart and take apart what's there, but just that alone saved me probably 5 to 10 hours of work. And it did it better than I would because it came up with things that I wouldn't have thought of. Sure, you don't use that as your final outcome, but as a starting point to say, good, of these 10, 5 of them are not really that good, but I'll keep those other 5. And by the way, it reminded me of 6, 7, and 8. And so ChatGPT, everybody listening right now, if you don't know how to use ChatGPT, all you have to do is message me on Facebook, and I will make sure that we figure out a way to make sure you learn how to use this technology effectively, literally every single day. Sorry, Stephen, back to our continued programming.
No apology needed. I was just going to put a plug in for them to listen to your 10-minute Friday bite. Actually, it might have even been only 7 or 8 minutes, but that's all it was that, excited me again. I was like, all right, I'm doing this. I knew about ChatGPT. I'd kind of used it a little bit, but I was too narrow-minded. I had to open up my mind again and go, Steve, you're looking at this the wrong way. And then once you started giving ideas of like using it to reply to emails, I was like, okay. The very next day after I listened to your podcast, I sat down in the huddle and I said to my team, guys, hands up if you know what ChatGPT is. And about half the group went up. Yeah. I said, for those who don't, you're going to know what it is right now. I said, everyone jump on a computer because we meet around the office and there's computers everywhere. So everyone jumped on a computer and I said, we're going to do this right now. I said, everyone every day must have ChatGPT on as a bookmark on their screen. It is mandatory. It is not a choice. It's going to be a golden rule that we call it in our office, and everyone's going to use it. I said every time an email comes in, you copy and paste that, and you pop it into ChatGPT, and you read over it, of course, make sure you're happy with the reply. But they started to do that, and I was getting back these amazing stories from my receptionists, from clinical team members, not sure how to respond to a patient's message or inquiry. I would have dentists who would ask me questions and I'd put it in. I was just amazed. I'm continuing.
It's amazing.
It's like a better version of your own self, right? It's exactly. like a filtered version of yourself.
For people who don't know what you're talking about, what I essentially said was, everybody, I don't care who you are, do not allow any of your team members to ever respond to any patient or any company or any dentist without 100%. Running at least their own response back through ChatGPT to say, hey, ChatGPT, please check syntax, grammar, and spelling for me. So that at least you're not sending things out that say supposedly or, using bad grammar. So at the very least, it'll clean up that. At the very best, you can ask it to rewrite it in a more professional or a more casual. You can create tones of how you want it written. And again, if you have faith that your front desk is amazing communication and has college level grammar, syntax, and ability to write back emails, then don't worry about it. But for the 99.9% of the rest of us, even for me personally, when I need a letter written, I write down what I want to say, how I want to say it. Please write it for me. And like you said, 90 times out of 100, it's giving me a template that I'll tweak and play with, but it's giving me such a much better point to get there. So folks, just use it more. But going back to our question, how did you make, if you were going to give one piece of advice other than go all in, which is, we've agreed, is there any other piece of advice you give people who would argue and say, I just can't be profitable with it?
You could just sort of go blindly all in and say, right, well, I'm not going to do any more braces. I'm just going to say every case is an aligner case, which is where I'm at right now. But you don't get there overnight. You do have to educate yourself. And I've spent, 6 figures easily on my education in aligner treatment, but I've got back tenfold in revenue from having spent that time and effort in learning about aligners. So you can't avoid the learning part of it. So keep investing in your education. Whatever's troubling you at the moment, whether it's extractions or deep bites or whatever it is in aligner therapy that's holding you back from taking on more aligner cases. And that's what I had to do. I just had to sort of take the bull by the horns and go, okay, I'm really struggling with deep bites, or I'm really struggling with extraction cases. I need to go to the guys out there who are handling those cases, the Willie Dayans of the world, the John Nicozisises, and so on and so forth, the Mazes of the world, and learn from them, because they're obviously handling these cases really well. And so that's what I did. I did a lot of coaching with them. I went to their seminars, webinars, whatever I could get my hands onto and be involved with. And then that instilled in me the confidence to then look a patient in the eyes and say, yes, we can treat your case with aligners, because most people want aligners. That's a fact. A basic business rule is you got to give your customers what they want. And what they want isn't always what you think they want. That's been a lesson that I've learned over the years. And what people want, at least 93% of them, is aligners. So I figure an orthodontic practice should be at least around that 90% mark share of chair aligners. I've gone above that, but I would say that would be a good sort of goal to set. It's about 90% aligner practice, probably 10% fixed cases, fixed brackets, and yeah, that's so. Make sure you spend your time in learning. Then you need to work on how to manage those cases. And just a quick pearl that I'd share with everyone is, if you're not already doing this, you need to have something like, and I just use Google Sheets, basically you can write to me. Glenn can give you my details, and I can share with you a screenshot of how I manage them. But basically, it's all managed on one sheet. This is thousands of aligner patients, all managed as in how to process them, all on one Google spreadsheet. From the moment they're scanned all the way through to starting their treatment, it's all managed with Google Sheets.
And Steven, quick little secret: I do the same thing. Awesome. It's amazing because you can put it on a spreadsheet and you can have a drop-down menu on the side about what stage of treatment they're in. So anybody who handles it can just change the status from scanned to case approved to case, whatever. You know what I'm referring to.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing. But can I ask you the question that it's probably coming to mind in so many people listening, which is, okay, you're 90%, share of chair aligners, but we know that more than 10% of our patients or 15% of our patients are not compliant, right? Like there's so many people who, I would argue that 20 plus 30 plus percent of our patients are not really doing what we ask them to do. How are you 90% share of chair aligners and yet getting compliance so that you are efficient and are getting done?
Yeah, compliance is, I think, I'm glad you brought that up. It's a topic that we don't hear a lot about sort of at conferences, right? And I think we should, because it is the biggest talking point that you're going to have an obstacle with aligner therapy. So you have to have a robust system and process that your whole team is on board with, and that takes some sitting down, ChatGPT, asking for ChatGPT ideas, and making sure that everyone's on the same board. So we have a very, very clear process. We borrowed something we learned from Terry Selke. Big shout out to him. I've learned a lot from him over the years. So he calls something an NDC appointment. It's called a no doctor consult, and that's basically they're booked in with an assistant, and not with myself. And that's for anyone that's struggling with their aligner treatment for any reason. They could be struggling with taking their dental monitoring scans. They could be struggling with just compliance, wearing them 22 plus hours a day. And that's a 20-minute appointment with a nurse. They're sitting down, having a very nice, kind, how can I help you conversation with them, going over whatever aspect they need to. And we book a number of those in if needed. It's rare to have multiple of those, but not uncommon to have one of those for a teenager throughout their treatment. But honestly, no different to the conversations we're having with our fixed appliance cases over the years about gingivitis and broken brackets, right? They're not fun conversations to have, but it's part of orthodontic treatment. You're in the wrong job if you don't want to have those conversations. And by the way, I'm not having those conversations. I'm delegating that to my assistants, and they're having those lovely conversations or difficult conversations, albeit with parents, with patients, and helping them through their challenges. So there's no perfect treatment that involves no compliance, right? So it's a matter of choosing your hard. which do you want to choose? Do you want to choose broken brackets? Do you want to choose gingivitis? Do you want to choose those sort of conversations to have? Or do you want to choose compliance with aligners? And I choose the latter.
And by the way, you said one word that I want to draw in. As we started getting low on time, and I still want to hit iChew because I think it's important to talk about that. Delegation. That's the name of the game here, folks. The labor markets are not getting easier. I've said this till I'm blue in the face. If you've got a team you like, that's great. In 6 months, let's talk. Chances are, statistically speaking, the team you have now that you love is not going to be the same team you have in 6 months. You need to learn to delegate. You need to be able to not micromanage, right? Train, create systems, be a great leader, be a great manager, but make sure that anything that you personally do not need to be doing, you are not doing. And if you listen to Stephen, that's the motto of his life is anybody who knows me really well, Stephen, anybody who knows me really well knows this. I speak about this all the time to my kids, to my wife, to my friends, because people will be like, oh my God, how is she going to do X, Y, and Z? I go, there's two kinds of problems in this world. There's my problem and not my problem. Those are the only two kinds of problems in this world. The ones that are not my problem are not my problem. The ones that are my problem are broken down into two types. Those I must deal with right now and those that I can deal with later, right? Once you learn that matrix is the key to life, life becomes really simple. And what you've done is you've created the my problem and not my problem. There are things you have to deal with in the practice, and everything else, whether it's aligners, dental monitoring, remote response, these doctor-less calls, you've outsourced them so that you can get your life back and do the things you want to be doing, as opposed to working on the minutia that's on your shoulders that too many doctors say they come home at the end of the day and they're worn out because they've been dealing with the stuff that they could have been delegating. And then they say, but I don't have enough team. I said, then why the hell aren't you bringing technology in to take the place of the team? You could be outsourcing to OrthoFi, Remote Response, DM, Grin, Align, Spark. I can come up with all the names. Why are you not delegating? Well, I'm not going to make a living. No, not with the way you're running your office. You're not, but you can. So sorry again. You bring out the best in me, Stephen. You bring out like the Baptist preacher. Like I want to get up in front of a congregation and get an amen. And so I apologize for the long rant there.
I love it. I love it.
Where did you learn to delegate so well? Because I want to jump into iChew, but I want to get an answer to that one.
It's kind of a funny story, and it's a big shout out to my late father. But he was a big man. He was very overweight, and just a kind, friendly, big bear of a guy, and big heart. But so he had 5 kids, right? I'm one of 5 kids, and my dad would be sitting down in the living room, and he had a lot of allergies, so he'd use a lot of tissues, or you guys would call them Kleenex or whatever. And he would say to my older brother, Rob, go get me a tissue. And then Rob would then delegate to me, Steve, you go get Dad a tissue, and then I would pass it down to my brother, and you can see where it's going. So delegation, my father was the king of delegation. We often thought it was because he was lazy and he was just overweight and he just couldn't be bothered getting things himself. But he wasn't. He was very smart. He was teaching us something very, very important in regards to business, and that's delegation. And he was the king of it. Everything that happened in our life, my dad was a result of delegating that to somebody. He knew what he was good at. He was good at accounting, and the rest he delegated. And, I've read a lot of autobiographies of all kinds of people of all wonderful companies around the world. And these are similar themes, right? Delegation.
Amen.
Surrounding yourself with people and businesses that do things that you just don't, that's not your core thing. That's not your, like if you think you can be the bookkeeper of the practice and also the orthodontist and also the receptionist. And, we've all seen them. There's a dentist here on the Gold Coast. He has one nurse, and it's just him, and they do everything. Like he'll even pick up the phone if the nurse is off, in the bathroom or something, and he'll answer the call. And I just think, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Now, his overheads would be very low, but equally so would his the amount of patients that he can see, right? And I think, we talk about delegation and profitability. The reason why you can be profitable is because you can scale. That's the only way. You have to see more patients, but you're delegating. So you're not going to be at the practice longer. It's going to be opposite. You're going to delegate to these great technologies, remote response, dental monitoring. Glenn's mentioned them over and over again, OrthoFi and so on. And you let these guys do what they do well because they have to turn a profit. So they are forced to do their job really well. So you're going to do it. You think you're going to do a great job because maybe you're a great orthodontist and you're a smart person, and you are, but you can't be an amazing, efficient receptionist. You can't be an amazing, efficient dental monitoring responder. You can't be a great accountant or a great bookkeeper or a great anything else. Just stay in your lane. Do you?
Yeah.
Be an orthodontist.
By the way, you're not going to get a phone call from OrthoFi in the middle of the day saying, hey, by the way, our assistant is out sick today, so we can't do your books today. Like, companies work at a level that's high. And when I started remote response, I realized I don't have the ability to call anybody and say, hey, we can't do your dashboard today because somebody's out on maternity leave, or we can't do it because someone's sick. You've got a responsibility as a third-party company to make sure that it is seamless every second of the day, like the internet. It can't go out. Right? You don't get a phone call and say, well, the internet's out because Joe, our technician, he had to take the day off. So sorry you don't have internet today. It just doesn't work that way. And that's the big difference between outsourcing and in-house. And if you can get outsourcing for less money than in-house, take it all day long, people.
Absolutely.
But let's go into iChews.
Yeah.
Now, when I first started speaking to Stephen, if you're watching this on video, hold those back up again in front of that beautiful parrot shirt, that Billabong Australian product shirt of parrots sitting on what looked to be palm trees. But if you notice this pink, black, and yellow things he's holding up, the first time I really spoke to Stephen, he's like, I want to send you some of these iChews. I said, I don't know what they are. And I got to be honest, I get approached by hundreds of people per year with a product that they want to pitch. And so he said, I made these chewy type objects. I don't get in trouble with picking names, but I created these rubber things that I can bite on to help seat aligners better. And I said, the world needs that like I need a third armpit, right? Like, there's already so many of them out there. What's the difference? So he said, let me send you a bunch. And he sent me a bunch. By the way, people, ask for the socks. The socks are cool. But he sent me a whole bunch of these iChews just to try. I have no financial interest in his company whatsoever. And I said, I'm just going to give him some patience. And they come back to my office the next time. I say, well, how'd you like those things? And it wasn't like they said it was better. They said, oh my God, can I have more? They were so much better than anything else. I said, what made them better? And it wasn't until I tried them on my own aligners and realized it's a different kind of rubber. It's a little less forgiving, but it's still forgiving. And what people said they loved the most, you want to guess what they said they loved the most, Stephen?
That the saliva didn't go inside them?
That was one. The biggest thing they said that they loved was the groove on the incisal edge. There's a little groove on it for the incisal edge. They said they loved that more than anything. And again, when we ran out of the samples, patients are coming in saying, no, I don't want the other ones. I want these. And I never would have thought that a piece of rubber would make that big of a difference, but people actually use them much more effectively and more readily. And so I stole some of your thunder, but talk a little bit about what they are and how you develop them. And most importantly, how can people get them if they want them?
Yeah, so basically during COVID, we all had a bit of downtime. And I guess for me, one of my bugbears with aligner therapy, and of course, the more aligner patients you have, the more of the problems become like kind of mammoth, right? You're not dealing with this problem once a day, you're dealing with it 50 times a day, and so on. So one of my concerns with the chewy and the regular round barrel cheap chewy that's made its way around the world was that it would get the saliva in the hollow portion of it, and it would get all gooey, and people wouldn't want to use it. So they were actually coming back asking every visit, I want some more chewies, I want some more chewies. So although they're actually really cheap to buy in Australia, they're about 50 to 70 Australian cents, depending on which company you buy them from. You're going to go through a number of those through the orthodontic treatment. So you're going to spend a number of dollars on the chewies, which is fine. But it still had the problem of splitting, getting squashed, rolling off the table onto the floor. People don't want to clean it down. They want to get a new one. I never loved them. Slipping around the mouth, trying to bite down and it just slips and slides all over the place, not engaging a canine. And so
Yeah.
all of these problems, I wrote them down and I thought to myself, well, there's got to be a solution here. And so during COVID, a friend of mine, not an orthodontist, but a dentist, good friend of mine, we helped found the Australasian Clear Aligner Society with another dentist. And we were just chatting and I said to him, I would really love to come up with a new chewy. But I just don't know I've never developed anything. I don't even know how to get it to market and even how to design it. And how do you even do that? And he said, well, funnily enough, my brother is a product engineer. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, basically he works for a medical company and they make things. They make medical devices. They design them on the computer and then they then work out what materials are needed, silicon and rubber and metal and whatever else. And then they make it. They make a prototype and then they test it and then it goes to market. And I said, okay, that sounds interesting. Do you think he would be interested in helping us, helping create this iChew, a new chewy? And 18 months later, we launched the iChew. And the first color was black, just like the T model Ford. And now it comes in 6 different colors. But what we aim to do is basically resolve all of those problems. It had to be solid, so there's no hollow center. So there's no way saliva can get and soak up into that.
Okay.
So that solved that problem. The next problem is it couldn't be round, so it couldn't roll off the table onto the floor or under the couch or whatever. So we made it, this nice sort of, it's not rectangular, but it's a very interesting shape, but it doesn't roll. So it sits very nicely on the table, on the bench top, on the countertop, in your clinic, in their bathroom. And then it has these very nice little imprints on the side, which were really cleverly done by my product designers, who the 4 of us have formed the company, the Chewy company it's called. And so it just, when you pick it up, you just instinctively know how to hold it because of the way it's been designed with these finger grooves. So it's very comfortable. It feels nice. The other thing is that we created the groove. That was really important. So there's a groove, an incisal groove, which hopefully it comes up on the camera there. I'll put it in the other color. Maybe you can see it in the orange better.
You can see it. Turn it a little bit sideways. So there you go. Perfect. You can see it. And turn the black one. There you go. Perfect.
Okay. So there's the groove. And it just makes it so easy for the patients to bite into that groove and to hold it, to squeeze down the aligners. The other cool thing you can do with it is you can just turn it on an angle like that and use these little corner pieces in the embrasure spaces. So that's really helpful too. It's a little something an added feature. And then lastly, it's a bit hard to see maybe, but I'll bring it up to the camera, is there's like a little round dimple at the end. And that's great for the canines, which often sit up buccally or up high, and they just won't sit down on a chewy. You won't be able to sort of engage them. You can double them up for open bites. So you can put stack one on top of the other for someone with a very serious open bite. Again, can't use a chewy in that situation. And so we're able to resolve all those problems. And I'm proud to say that, it's being sold in 13 different countries now. It's FDA approved. It's TGA approved for the Australasian area of the world. And we're getting some amazing feedback. Dave Boschkin is a big user of our product, loves it, and we have a 98% reorder rate, which has been great. So it's been a fun little thing. It's certainly not something I'm going to retire on. We actually don't heavily market it. It's really just word of mouth, which is not smart business, but it's something that because all of us have full-time jobs,
Exactly.
and we haven't turned it into a company, a big company yet. It's just a small little side hustle, but I think with a bit of time, we'll work on maybe turning it into something big. And yeah.
Here's the secret. For over 15 years, I have a company that sells dental mirrors and retractors. They're custom made for my specs that I used to teach around the world. People don't know that. Why? Because my dad is the shipping manager, so I keep him out of my mom's hair. That's basically what we do. And it just, people who buy them over and over and over again because they're amazing mirrors and retractors that came out of me teaching a course. But you're not going to make $1 million off of mirrors and retractors. And the worst part is, as you've learned, nobody else wants to make it. You can't go to a Hugh Freedy and go make these for, sell them, make a profit, give me a tiny piece per. They don't want to do that. So if the small guys like you and me don't create these products, they don't exist. Right. And that's the part is, so thank you for doing it. I appreciate it because I know it takes a lot of time and you don't make a lot of money from it. But I will tell you, they do feel different significantly. And every single patient of mine who I gave one of the samples has said to me how they loved it far and away more than any other quote unquote rubber chewable plastic rubber thing, whatever we're going to call it. And so how do they order it if they want it? Can they get it from the US?
They sure can. Well, we'll ship it out. So basically you go to Chewly, that's CHEWLY.com.au. And George, my business partner who does the shipping, will get you your iChews.
Chewly.com.
Chewly.com.
.au.
.com.au. That's correct.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
CHEWLY. Yep.
I had no idea.
It's truly the best thing you'll ever use on your aligner patients.
Nice. And it's truly been a pleasure chatting with you today, Steve. No, really. Thank you for following my vision of joining Remote Response. Thank you for being the first person who's gotten me into the Australasia market, which has been a blast. I've met some amazing people. Thank you for being somebody who actually followed the vision of coming to Orthopreneurs Summit all the way from Australia. I think next year in Vegas, we've got a really nice size Australian group coming. I was speaking to Voss, and he's grabbing every person under the sun from that whole region who wants to come to that meeting. So I'm going to do something. I already told him I'm going to do something very special for Australians who are coming. I think I might even give you a free Vegemite sandwich.
I'll bring the Vegemite.
Yeah, I'm going to get you a guy from Brussels who's 6'4" and full of muscles, and he'll just smile at you and give you a Vegemite sandwich. I'm sorry, it took you a second to get that one.
I got it. But
really, thank you for being the guy you are, who's always innovating, always pushing the envelope, and for being a part of the global community to help us all get better at what we're doing. So with that, I really appreciate everything, Stephen, and thank you for being here today.
It's been my pleasure. And I signed up to the Vegas Orthopreneurs Summit like on my way home from Mexico and the US. So that was just a no-brainer. I'm committed now. I'm all in. So I'll be attending every year until I can't attend anymore.
Well, I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. And
love to you guys.
Wishing you the best. And because I get you through Remote Response, I know we'll chat soon.
Absolutely.